In a forgotten corner of the American backwoods, where the trees grow too close and the silence is older than memory, there lives a family with no clocks, no mirrors, and no names beyond their own. They weren't raised to greet strangers. They were raised not to know they existed. This is not a story about crime. It's not even about poverty. This is about generations raised in the same four walls, speaking their own dialect, growing up with no school, no records, and no outside blood. They didn't just live in isolation, they became it. And what happens to the body, to the mind, to the soul when the world forgets you? And you forget it right back? Stick around, because what you're about to hear has been hidden behind locked screen doors, whispered only in mountain fog, and buried under generations of shame. Subscribe if you're ready to see the America no one talks about. No paved road leads to the house. In fact, most maps don't even bother to list the place. To reach it, you have to walk, not drive, down a dirt trail choked with thorns and overgrown roots, past where the mail trucks stop and the cell service dies. That's where you'll find it. A collapsing two-story farmhouse, hunched between the Appalachian hills, like it's trying not to be noticed. Locals say the family that lives there, what's left of it, hasn't had visitors in years. They also say you shouldn't go asking questions unless you want trouble. Not the loud, violent kind. The quiet, generational kind. The kind that's bred, not born. They weren't always hidden. Back in the early 1900s, census workers tried to count the people in that hollow. They gave up after 2 visits. No one would open their doors. Some didn't even seem to understand what the government wanted. The oldest family members spoke in broken phrases, a warped dialect somewhere between Old English and mountain slang. Over time, the name of the family vanished from records entirely. But their bloodline stayed, tightening, doubling, looping in on themselves. The story starts with two brothers. Or maybe it was cousins. No one's really sure. What's clear is that, by the 1940s, they had married two sisters from the same family and built homes within walking distance of each other. When their children grew up, the options were few. The outside world was too far, the school too expensive, the land was too isolated, and the values passed down, silence, secrecy, survival, didn't exactly encourage newcomers. So the sons married their nieces, and the daughters stayed inside. And the babies were born with names that didn't match any paperwork. Some didn't even have names at all. By the 1980s, generations of intermarriage had twisted the family tree into something barely recognizable. A child born with 3 fingers, another who never spoke a word, one boy known only for barking, not talking, a girl who would hide in the attic and tear out her hair when visitors came near. Were these signs of genetic degradation? Probably, but to the family, it was normal. It was just how things were. Inside the house, time froze. Old gas lamps hung on nails. A stove from the 1940s remained the centerpiece of the kitchen. Plastic was taped to the windows instead of glass. Rats came and went. No one called pest control. No one called anyone. By the time modern journalists caught wind of the family, after a tip from a social worker who'd quit in horror, the damage had already been done. Photographers reported a smell that lingered in their clothes for days. The rooms were cramped, wallpaper peeling in great wet sheets. But it was the people that haunted them. They couldn't make eye contact. They answered questions with grunts or giggles. One man, nearly 40, still carried around a stuffed animal like a toddler. Another blinked at the sun like it was an unfamiliar light. And some, the older ones, didn't react at all, as though the part of them that once understood the outside world had gone completely dim. Some researchers called it an extreme case of generational inbreeding. Others simply called it a tragedy. But there's a theory, whispered among Appalachian locals, that this family isn't just some isolated anomaly, that they're part of a larger network. Families scattered through the woods, across hills and hollows, all hiding their own secrets. Some say it started centuries ago, with settlers fleeing war or persecution. Others claim it's been going on since before America was a country, that in certain parts of these hills, blood stayed close on purpose. And now, in this house with no roads, the price of that closeness is written into every gene, every glance, every broken sentence. What does it mean to be forgotten by the world? Worse, what does it mean to forget the world back? There were rumors that the family used to send one man down to get supplies, a brother or uncle, no one was sure. He walked the 6 miles barefoot, bought canned goods, coffee, flour, paid in crumpled bills or sometimes coins worn smooth with age. And when asked about his family, he'd just say, "We got enough." No one ever pressed further. It's what was happening behind the peeling walls of that house that disturbed the few who dared enter. One visiting county nurse in the late 1990s claimed she saw a toddler with teeth already rotting out, rocking back and forth under the table. Another reported a teenage girl whose speech was nothing more than clicks and squeals. There were children who recoiled from sunlight, children who laughed when others cried, children who, according to the nurse's own notes, did not seem to recognize themselves in a mirror. Some had birth defects so visible, it was hard to imagine no one had intervened sooner. Fused toes, crooked limbs, misshapen skulls. Some couldn't walk upright. Others had eyes that didn't move in the same direction. But beyond the physical signs, what truly chilled observers was their emotional landscape. Blank stares, sudden rages, or worse, eerie silence. You might wonder why this wasn't stopped. The answer is as bleak as the hollow itself. Because by the time any agency arrived, the family had already mastered the art of retreat. They disappeared into the woods, or shut the door and simply pretended they weren't home. Some officials got lost just trying to find the property. Others gave up after hostile encounters with dogs, or with armed men who emerged from behind trees, unspeaking but unmistakably threatening. But beneath all of this, the isolation, the deformities, the silences, was something even more haunting, the sense that these people didn't know anything was wrong. To them, life was just this. No history books, no mirrors, no clocks, just a world that never grew larger than the next room. And inside those rooms, the rules were unspoken but strict. Girls stayed hidden when visitors came. Boys were expected to chop wood, hunt, or sit on the porch and watch. Watch what? No one ever said. Meals were eaten together, mostly in silence. Births were handled privately, sometimes without even boiling water. Deaths, too, were
Subscribe to
kept
my
within the
channel.
family. One old man buried a baby wrapped in a pillowcase behind the house. No headstone, no name. The most disturbing stories, though, come from those who escaped, if escaped is the right word. A few distant cousins managed to break away and live in nearby towns. Some talk about the house like it was a prison. Others speak with strange affection, as if the horror of it has been dulled by time, or confusion, or guilt. One such woman, now in her 50s, described a childhood where she thought mirrors were evil, baths were rare, and nobody talked about anything that happened at night. Another man, now homeless and suffering from severe schizophrenia, once told a reporter that the family used to marry the smart ones off to each other and keep the slow ones close. He didn't elaborate. By the early 2000s, DNA testing was quietly attempted by social workers and researchers. What they found was staggering. Some of the children had coefficient of inbreeding scores higher than any ever recorded in the region, higher even than the infamous rural cases from Kentucky or West Virginia. Geneticists, in hushed circles, called it a collapse of variation. It was like looking at DNA that had folded in on itself again and again until almost nothing unpredictable remained. And still, no official charges were filed. Why? Because who do you charge? When there's no proof of coercion, no criminal activity that can be defined by modern law? This wasn't a crime of violence. It was a slow, generational erasure of identity, of agency, of reality itself. There were whispers, unconfirmed, of children who had never even been given names, of individuals whose mental capacity remained that of infants into their 30s, of a woman who believed the year was still 1974, and of a boy who would sit outside on cold nights and howl at the moon, thinking it was a god who once spoke to his grandfather. Even the land seemed cursed. A few miles from the house, trees grow in twisted spirals. No birds sing there. Locals say compasses spin in circles in that hollow, that electronics die and dogs refuse to enter. True or not, those stories keep curious people away, which of course is exactly how the family prefers it. What makes this all the more unsettling is the realization that this isn't just a fluke, a single, tragic family lost to time. It's a glimpse into what happens when isolation meets tradition, when silence is more powerful than intervention, and when the outside world looks away. For too long. And so, they remain, out there in the Appalachian fog, somewhere between myth and memory. A family whose bloodline twisted in on itself for generations, not out of evil, but out of habit, fear, and forgotten paths. They didn't ask for the world to forget them, but once it did, they forgot the world too. As you sit in your own home, surrounded by light, technology, and the hum of modern life, take a moment to imagine what it feels like when time stops. When your entire world is four walls, a flickering lamp, and the same faces, day in and day out, for decades. We often ask how this could happen in America. The answer is chillingly simple because no one was watching. And now that you are watching, don't look away. If stories like this intrigue you, disturb you, or challenge what you think you know about American history, hit that subscribe button, because what we uncover next might be even darker. Thanks for watching. Stay curious and stay human.